G'day viewers, how they hanging? Peter here. It's a lovely winter's day in Melbourne, and so it's only 16 degrees. If you look out, it's quite sunny, and I'm walking around in shirt sleeves. So I'm thinking, it's quite a nice day. Why wouldn't you be out in the shed doing something? So today I'm going to fuck around with a little job that's a long-term job. I'm hoping to make a mini bike one day, like I would have built in the 70s, but I never had the money or the equipment, or my dad was not mechanically minded, so it never came about for me, but I always dreamed of it, and now I'm a 60-year-old grey-haired fat bastard, and I thought, well, it might take 2 or 3 years, but I'll gradually get the bits together. But I think the hardest part about building a mini bike probably really is a steering head. And I think in the 70s you could buy them. But I thought, well, I'm going to make one from scratch. Now, I don't know if it's going to work, but I've just invested a little bit of money in some bolts and nuts and washers. So if you want to come into the shed, let's have a look what it is we're going to do. So this is what I've got happening, and so far I've got, you can see I've bought 7 nuts. Now for some reason it was important to me that it was an odd number. I don't know if I'm right or not. I've got a high tensile bolt here, and these are high tensile nuts. Now the bolt that I bought, it's an M16, 140 long, which for our American people, that means it's 16 millimeters diameter and 140 long. So in America that would be 5/8, and it's a, what is it? It's a class 8.8, which in America I think would be a grade 5. And it's just really for me to get the material. It's just a better grade of steel, because I want this thing to have a reasonable service life. Now, you may remember this is scrap offcut here is, I used to get that 2-inch square angle iron. I used to buy the offcuts for $1 a piece, and this was an offcut. The reason this angle here is irrelevant, that was the shape of the scrap. Now, what I'm thinking about doing is welding that to the points of the nuts, horizontally like that, and welding the 1st and the 3rd and the 5th and the 7th to this piece, and then I'll trim this back wherever it lands, and that I hope to weld in between the right and the left tube where they come up to meet the headstock. And then the even numbered nuts are going to be, sorry, or is that backwards? Anyway, the other numbers are going to be welded to, I'll call it a triple tree for want of a better name. And that is represented by these. I've got these 3mm washers, which would be 1/8 in America. And I've chosen this bolt length because if you see here, see how there's a bit of a chamfer here where it runs out, and by getting 7 bolt nuts, and this represents the top plate in the triple tree, which I'm going to make out of 1/8 material, and this represents the bottom plate that I'm going to make out of 1/8 material, and then the bolt will obviously run down the guts of it. Now, the bolt is a high tensile 16mm. these nuts are high tensile 14 millimeters, and I've got to drill them out. Now if I drill them out, I tried with my 16 millimeter drill and it drills 3 thou oversize, so I wasn't happy with that. The next closest drill I had was 14 millimeter, and that was a bit of machining, so I found a 9/16 was the best I had, so I'll drill them out undersize and then I'll machine them out with a boring bar so that they're a very neat fit on this high tensile bolt. And that will mean when in service life of the mini bike, instead of being one service that was all, if it's just a tube, you're wearing all that weight and working load is just up the top, whereas I'm spreading it over 4 surfaces and they're high tensile steel. So I actually think this will work. I don't know if it will. And then ultimately, I've got as you can see, I've got a nylock there. So ultimately I'll wind this up here and then put the nylock on, so they won't be clamped, so that you can rotate it, and then I'll just dock that off to length, whatever it lands to be. Now my expectation is when I weld this it'll move around a little bit, so my expectation is it'll be quite tight when it's new and difficult to steer, but I'd prefer that than it being loose. So I would expect that probably within 2 hours of use it will free up and be quite workable, and I'd prefer to have that than being pretty sloppy right from the start, and it's only going to get more and more sloppy as things go on. I think that's all I want to tell you. So I can't tell you exactly what's going on because this is one of those jobs I actually don't know what I'm building until I built it, and so I sort of can't give you a thumbnail sketch or anything like that. All I'm saying, this is what I'm thinking about in my head. I've not looked, I've never built a mini bike before. I've not done any Google searches on how to build one or anything like that. So this is just straight off the top of my head, thinking about how can I build this cheap, and it's just a few dollars worth of nuts and bolts and washers. Now I have drilled out one, I don't know if you can see that. Here the light's coming in the wrong way, isn't it? I've drilled one out. It's not to finished size yet, so let's go and look in the lathe. So this is my setup at the moment. So as you can see, this is a 9/16 drill. I've got the nut in the chuck. I've got myself a new bottle for my 25% oil and 75% Caro lube, and this bottle I'm pretty happy with actually, and I've drilled a 1 millimeter hole in there. So if I just give it a bit of a blurb there. So let's turn it on and see what we're doing. Now that's going to give a bit of a rough surface finish, but you can see what I mean. So that's got the bulk of it out. So now I'll tidy that up. Now my first thought is I went through my box. I haven't got a boring bar. Now I found this. Can you see it? Let's see if it'll focus. It's not going to focus, is it? Gee. Trying to get you guys to focus and I can't. That's looking better, isn't it? Now, can you see it's chipped on the corner? So I could have ground that back. Now, I acquired this when I bought some tools and it was in the bottom of a toolbox from a fitter and turner. Now, it's a little boring bar, and it has a flat machined on the flat, but the flat, if you look, is in the wrong place. So I was thinking about grinding another flat on it, and then I've got a 3/8 tool holder and put it in there and do something like that, not have a nice tungsten carbide boring bar. But then I remembered, I don't know if you remember when I did the cylinder head for the Morris Minor motor, remember when I ground, I might have to get this here. Remember when I ground this up? Now, I'm a woodworker, as you know, so I just ground this up on the bench grinder, my 40-year-old bench grinder, and it's only a Chinese bit of tool steel, and you know, I think that's, I haven't got a tool and cutter grinder or anything like that, so freehand straight off the grinder, to me that's perfectly acceptable. You might remember this. I made this cutter up to do the Morris Minor, the pins for mounting the hubcaps. So that's what that end came from. And then this end was to drill out, remember on the rocker shaft, I had made up some 20mm packers, or thick washers with a 20mm hole in them, just to move the rockers so they were in the centre of each valve. And I think for a backyarder, freehand grinding on a old bench grinder, that worked perfectly well. So clearly, if I put that in the tool holder, after I've drilled all of these out, I'll make them a neat fit on the on all the nuts, and then I'll weld it together, and I'll see if that sort of creates anything. I don't know what I'm building, but I'm thinking that this might work. So we'll see what comes out at the end of the day. So, Uru.